Hey, everybody. Welcome to this exciting episode of the Ask a Sex Therapist podcast. We are going to be talking about male bisexuality with the Boyslut himself, Zachary Zane. So welcome, Zach. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like I have to plug but whenever I say Boyslut, I have to hold it up.
Yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, you get to see Zach actually holding his book up. So Zachary Zane is a Brooklyn-based columnist, sex expert, and activist whose work focuses on sexuality, culture, and the LGBTQ community. He's the author of Boyslut, a memoir and manifesto, and co-author of Men's Health, Best Sex Ever. I love how there's a period after each word. He currently has 2 columns, Sexplain It, the sex and relationship advice column at Men's Health, and Navigating Non-Monogamy at Cosmopolitan, where he shares all the mistakes he's made in his polyamory journey so you don't have to. He's also the founder and editor-in-chief of Boyslut Zine, which publishes real sex stories from kinksters worldwide. His work has been published in the New York Times, Rolling Stones, the Washington Post, GQ, Playboy, Slate, Cosmo, Bustle, Vice, NBC, Dazed, The Daily Beast.
All right, that's enough. That's enough of that. Yeah, I'm always wondering what bio people have of mine, and that's I appreciate it, but that's enough of that.
I feel the same way. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I should have made it shorter. But I mean, Suffice to say, Zach, that like you have written for some amazing publications, and you're like all over the place, which is pretty cool.
Thank you. I'm trying here. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, I mean, we've never chatted before, so for anyone listening, I just like stalked Zach a little bit on Instagram, a little light stalking, never hurt anybody, and I was like, oh, like his writing is really not boring. I need to have this guy on the show.
Yeah, I'm many things, but boring is not one of them.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good trait. So, can you tell us just a little bit, like, or maybe a lot, like, how did you get into this? Like, how did you become a sex writer and expert and get into all these amazing publications?
Sure. Do you want the long or the short of it? The medium?
Like, maybe let's go with medium, but like I may ask more questions. We'll see.
Sure. So I thought I was going to get a PhD in clinical psychology. I was actually working at Harvard Medical Center as a smoking cessation researcher and counselor. So figuring out the best way to get people to quit smoking cigarettes.
Okay.
I was ready to apply for PhD programs, and I kind of freaked out. I was like, for this seemingly altruistic profession, they are cutthroat, they're nasty, they steal your work. It's 6 years of a PhD, 3 years of postdoc, and then you just write grants until you die. And I'm like, this sounds horrible.
I actually had the same experience. I volunteered on research at University of Chicago so that I could get a PhD, and then also decided not to.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and more power to the people who want them. I just realized that was not for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, I started writing at work, and because I was a little bit bored, and I remember when I asked my PI, I was like, "Hey, can you put me on some new studies?" She was like, "Well, when clients need you, they need you. I rather you."
What's a PI, by the way?
Principal investigator of the study. Sorry.
Okay.
And so I had 20 hours at work where I could just write, and I didn't want to conspicuously or to do anything, but I didn't want to conspicuously fuck off on Facebook because it's just not a good look.
Yeah.
But if I'm writing in a Word doc, no one questions.
This is fascinating.
So I ended up writing a novel, which will never see the light of day. Terrified of it. It was 22. Okay. But in order to get an agent, you have to write for certain places. Or you just have to write for publications. And so I wrote a piece. It was for Exo Jane, if you remember that site.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
And I wrote a piece, and they titled it, "I Came Out as Bi and Now Can't Date Anyone Gay or Straight." And I spoke about how that, essentially I spoke about how hard it was for me to come out as bi and to embrace it. And then once I did, I thought the world was going to be my oyster. I thought men would want to date me, women would want to date me.
Yeah.
And that was not the case. Okay. Straight women would refuse to date me. They would often ghost me when they found out I was bi. Yeah. They were so afraid.
This episode.
Yeah, they were so afraid I was using the label as a stepping stone on the way to being full-blown gay. And then gay men were just extremely pedantic. They were like, "Oh, honey, I was bi too. You'll get there." And I'm like, and then they'd try to kiss me.
So you're
and I'd be like,
the same thing from both groups of people.
Both groups of people. At least gay men would at least date and fuck me, but women really wouldn't when they found out I was bi. Then I ended up falling in love and dating this bi woman, and it was just so incredible to date someone else who was also bi, to feel so accepted, to not worry about appearing too effeminate or for checking out a guy or whatever it was. And it was truly incredible. just a great experience. And honestly, since her, I don't think I've seriously dated a straight woman. I've only dated bi women, in large part because straight women don't want to date me. That's like the truth of it. And I also like dating someone else who's bi and part of the queer community as well.
Okay,
So I'm
I
not
can see
dating an
that.
ally. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
But so this piece came out and it went viral in a way I was not expecting. And part of the reason it went viral was because there was such a dearth of bisexual content back then.
Especially for dudes.
Especially for dudes.
Still.
This was in, I think this article came out in April 2015, maybe? So about 8 years ago. And at the time, like, the content for bisexuality that was out was very much like 10 things to never say to a bisexual person or 10 myths about bisexuality. It was content written about bi people to convince gay and straight people that we exist. So it wasn't actually any information for other bi people who are struggling with elements of their identity, dealing with internalized biphobia or the struggles of dating or coming out while bi or whatever it was. And so what ended up happening was after this piece went viral, I was able to kind of like lean in and started writing bi content as often about male bisexuality specifically, that really focused on like helping bi men. I'm no longer trying to prove that we exist. Like, bi guys know we exist. I know we exist. You know we exist. I want some content that can help you live in a world when so many people believe you don't exist, right? So through that, I started writing a lot of bi content and kind of became known as the bi guy. And then from there, I've always been, a sexual person. And for me, my sexuality and my sex life is really part of my sexual identity, right? Like, I don't separate the two the way that some people like doing so. I actually don't think so. And I think as like a political movement, we need the sex positive movement and the queer movement need to work together.
Absolutely.
They really are related here.
Yep.
But so, I started writing a lot about bisexuality and then just sexuality and sex in general, sex and dating relationships. Then I branched out from queer sex to just male sexuality, which is how I got the column at Men's Health. And now it's just kind of expanded out to, sexuality and dating and relationship advice for all genders, all sexual orientations, all ages, for everyone now.
That's so cool. And I can tell as you talk about it that you just really love it.
I really do like my job. There's a lot of bullshit that goes along with it, and I think being a new writer and like, of course, I try not to read reviews, but some people like they love the book, but there's one sentence that rubbed them the wrong way and then they hate it. Or just like, there's
like, okay, they're missing the point.
Absolutely missing the point. And there's just a lot more drama that goes into it that I wish was not the case. But beyond that, the actual writing and the actual like book tour, which I'm still on for Pride Month right now, like actually getting to meet people and seeing how my work has impacted their lives and how they feel less alone.
You should
like
come to St. Pete. I live in St. Pete, Florida, and we have this amazing LGBTQ bookstore that is constantly hosting authors. So if you want to add stop, let me know.
But it's like the actual book tour and meeting readers has been truly phenomenal and like keeps me going and really makes it like all worth it. So that aspect's been awesome.
That's so cool. And I kind of want people to understand too. Like, I think until you've really put yourself out there publicly in a way like that with like your I'm guessing your book feels like your baby and stuff.
Oh yeah. Like, it's a baby that I was pregnant with for 5 years. I started writing the proposal in 2018. This was the longest gestation period.
Super long.
Yeah.
A little bit delayed birth, but it's here now, which is like very exciting. But it's vulnerable. Like sometimes I think when you're like a little bit, there you go, guys, there's the book if you're looking. But I do love the cover, by the way. But yeah, it's like it's vulnerable, I think, to like really put yourself out there. And even though you've been doing it for a while, it's like this is your creation. So
it's also, I think what people get a little confused by is the fact that even though I'm very open sexually, so like I told you the digital zine also called Boyslut, which is either great branding or extremely confusing. I haven't decided yet.
I like it.
But that zine is really raunchy, graphic, explicit sexual content. And it's so much fun. I love writing it. But people assume because I write, about getting DP'd or my hairy asshole or sucking dick, whatever. I love how I'm like whispering right now. Like, oh no, the listeners might hear.
The podcast is marked explicit.
I talk about how I love gagging on dick, whatever it is. Like, that's actually not me being super open. I'm like, that's me being open sexually, but being open sexually doesn't mean like I talk about my relationship with my family. I think a hard part of this book was, going back and looking at a lot of my past relationships where I really hurt people. Of course, it was never maliciously. That was not my intent. But when I was closeted and young and didn't have the correct information about how to go about rejecting people, about how to be honest, like, yeah, I hurt a lot of people in my college days and earlier 20s. And of course, I still hurt people now. I do my best not to.
Do,
you know
right?
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a part of dating. We know if someone wants to date you and you break up with them, you're going to hurt them. I try to do so it as kindly and honestly as I can. But I think that was a struggle too. So it's a different type of openness and vulnerability than what I'm typically used to. So why this feels bigger? Because it's different.
I'm kind of curious about your journey too, of just like, when did you know that you were bisexual?
It is a journey. It is a journey that I write about all in my book, Boyslut, a memoir manifesto.
You guys should check it out.
You totally should check it out. No, but so
let's give the people a little tease, though.
Yeah, a little tease. And so, you know, there was always gay rumors about me. I was definitely more feminine. I liked musical theater. I did water polo, which is the gayest sport of all time. It's just half naked men grabbing each other's crotches. Sense. But the thing is, I knew I loved women and I loved dating women. I've been heartbroken by women. I pined over women, but I kind of always saw myself somewhat gravitate towards men too. And there were these rumors. And at the time, like, the B in LGBTQ was like very silent. You know what I mean? And like no one believed bisexuality was real at all 10 years ago. Even when I got to college, like the reason why, so when I got to college, I got drunk to hook up with a guy within like a week to try it out. And I had to get so drunk in order to do it. In the middle of him blowing me, I went to go vomit twice.
Oh, God.
And he was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "It's fine. Just keep going. This is good. This is it." And then the next day I was like, so I didn't like that experience, probably because I was fucking hammered, and nervous, not because it was a guy. So I convinced myself, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm straight. But then I kept on getting drunk and blacked out and hooking up with dudes. And mind you, at the same time, I'm still hooking up with a ton of women too. Okay. But like, I would think I was gay or straight. I didn't think bisexuality was an option. And the few guys I knew who were bi in college came out as gay shortly after. So it was just like, there was no bisexual visibility in the media. There weren't like bi male celebrities.
That must be so confusing as a young person.
It was just like, so what am I? Why do I keep gravitating towards this? And another compounding factor in this is I have OCD, which I talk about at length in the book. And there's something called, it used to be HOCD, now it's SOOCD, but it used to be homosexual OCD or homosexuality OCD. Now it's a sexual orientation OCD. So a not uncommon like obsession that people with OCD have is thinking they're gay or bi when they are actually not. So this can be like a straight father. Like, it sounds like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. But when you have obsessions with OCD, they're very intense, or they can be.
I've seen that with clients in other areas of sexuality, like worrying they're attracted to children or something like that.
Also very common.
Yeah.
No, very common. It's almost like this fear of it. Yeah, it's this paranoia. But what happened is these men will like leave their wives, leave their children, and like upend their lives because they think they're gay and they're actually not. It's a symptom of their OCD. Yeah. And you actually ask them, like, what is it that you like about men? They don't really have an answer. You know what I mean? I've had like a psychiatrist in the past that really dismissed me when I said bisexual. Like, oh, could I be gay? He was like, no, you're not. Like, could I be bi? And he's like, oh, bisexuality doesn't exist in men, is what he said.
Wait, did he really say that?
He said that. And this was 2006. And so in part, he was like treating my OCD, being like, oh, I don't want to engage with this because this is an obsession. But in part, this was right after Northwestern came out with their very famous study that then got published in the New York Times and everything. And it was a research study that was like terribly done methodologically. Like, it had a small sample size and it determined bisexuality wasn't real because of like people's guys' erections while like watching porn, gay and straight porn. It was like this terrible study that like was not obviously like just levels of erection are like not indicative of, you know what I mean? Like indicative of someone's sexual orientation. There's so much that goes into it. Yeah. But anyway, so it was very in vogue at this point to say bisexuality wasn't real. Like, and that's what the research community was saying. Northwestern a few years later came out with a study being like, oh, actually we did a new study and it showed that bisexuality was real. So it was also at that time too. So I had this like, I was obsessed about figuring out if I was gay or straight, like on top of just the general confusion that I had that I think added another confusing element. And it wasn't till it was like after college, I remember talking to my brother and he was like, Zach, you know, I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and they were
Okay.
like, he was like, I also like, there were gay rumors about me as well, and I think I hooked up with a couple of guys in college, realized it wasn't for me. Like, I understand exploring, but like,
Yeah.
you've been exploring for like 5 years. Like, I did it like a couple of times over the course of a few weeks. Like at what point?
Right.
Yeah, at what point you're no longer like experimenting? At what point is this like a stable orientation? I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be married to my husband of 40 years, and like on our 40th anniversary, I'll be like, thank you so much for staying with me as I continue to figure out my sexuality as a straight man, being married to you for 40 years. It's been such a beautiful, beautiful thing in my life. Like, no, I didn't want that. So I actually ended up seeing this LGBTQ affirming therapist. And I made it very clear that I went to see him because I wanted advice. I don't want a therapist that's just like, oh, well, what do you think? I'm like, I have OCD. You can't ask me what the fuck I think. My brain is just running in circles all the time. It's muddled garbage.
That will take up the whole session.
Yeah, like it's not actually, I need to get out of my head. Like, that's what I need help with. And I need some guidance with that. And I saw that he was previously an attorney for like a decade or two and then switched into being a therapist. So I'm like, I want that bluntness. So my first session, I proceeded on this like long soliloquy about how I think I'm gay and then I think I'm straight, but I do this, and spoke about my attractions and how I get drunk and do this. And on the second session, I started again with the same monologue. And he interrupts me. He goes, I'm going to interrupt you. 2 things. First is like, you keep on saying you're confused. So confused means something clinically, like when discussing sexual orientation, and you don't sound confused. You kind of aren't necessarily meeting that criteria. Like you sound very clearly bisexual. Like is there something I'm missing? And I was quick to respond, oh, that shit doesn't exist in men. And he responded, Zach, you're too smart to think that. Which was kind of like the perfect like ego jab, like as well, like being like, Zach, you're smart, dude. Like, in what world would that make sense? Right, it's like you're only attracted to men, only attracted to women, and then only women can be bisexual, but men, like it logically,
it just doesn't even make sense.
It logically doesn't make sense, like it doesn't at all. Like when you think of just the diversity of human experience in any capacity, of course, in a sexual capacity as well. So then after him, I was like, oh my God, this is real. But still, it took some time. Like, I thought I was bi-sexual and hetero-romantic. So to clarify, that means, I could sleep with anyone of all genders. But in terms of dating, I only could love and have a romantic attraction towards women.
Yes.
And while that is a valid sexual orientation or identity, that was not mine. For me, it was just internalized homophobia and internalized biphobia. Yeah. And it took me having this whirlwind experience of this man I met in Provincetown and like falling in love with him after like 48 hours where I was like, oh, okay, this is not the behavior of a man who is only romantically attracted to women. And so, and then at that point I kind of, removed the hyphens, removed the dashes, whatever it is. And now I'm just bisexual and in every sense of the word.
I mean, it's fascinating hearing about your journey, and like, it's amazing you got through it and got so clear based on everything you went through and everything you were told by like professionals too.
It maybe explains why it took so long. I feel like some people are like, how did you not know sooner? And again, and not even that long. I came out in 2014 to my parents, and like publicly 2015. So let's say I was 23, 24 during all of this, which is still on the younger side, for this type of stuff. I mean, especially for millennials. I mean, there were some millennials who came out at 16, 15, the way I feel like Gen Z is now coming out 16, 15. But, and the Gen X boomers, whatever it is, they came out much later. So I feel like I was kind of right, average, whatever it was for millennials. But yeah, that's why it took 5 years of getting blacked out and hooking up with guys. And in that time, like, it was hard. I felt so alone and confused, and just like I wanted to have romantic attraction. I wanted to have romantic relationships and sexual relationships. I didn't even know who to pursue. I couldn't even enjoy my dates because I'm like, do I even like men? Do I even like women? I couldn't even enjoy sex. I was so in my head. Yeah, that it was really challenging during college. And I still dated people, and I still had decently healthy and okay relationships while I dated people in college. But it was still like this, in the back of my mind, there was always this inner turmoil that was going on that was just really challenging. And also reliving it while writing Boyslut was also somewhat challenging too, because like now I'm doing great. Like in terms of, I still make some mistakes in my relationships. I still date people who aren't right for me. But in terms of like my bisexuality, like I own my sex life. I own my sexuality. I'm surrounded by people who like specifically want to date me because I'm bi. Like not even like, like the point where it's like borderline fetishization, which whatever, I'm fine with. Like, who specifically want that. I have a huge bi community. All of my friends are bi. Like I feel welcomed and loved, and I have a beautiful relationship with my partner. I'm polyamorous. Like in terms of like the life I have now that I've kind of created, it's great, and it's great. And I really do believe that if you are bi or queer or whatever it is, like you can have this life too. I sound like an infomercial, and you can have this life too. But I think really,
which is true though, and that's why it's important that you're sharing your story everywhere and with your book and on your Instagram and all your columns.
It really is, and like the way I'm able to tell my story is because life was so shitty beforehand, and being like, hey, like this is possible, and that's what hopefully I try to show in my book. Like it really, like you can find your queer community, you can find people who love and accept you and embrace you,
which is what we all deserve.
And you can have your own relationship with sex. I think because the title Boyslut, there were some people who were like, oh, this is just for slutty people, like this book. And it's like, I mean, this book, it's definitely a shout out to my sluts. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
But the whole point is about owning your relationship with sex, however that may look. So that could be, getting fucked every day of the week and taking bareback loads in a sauna, and God bless, more power to you. I'll see you in the sauna. It could also be, you're asexual or demisexual and only have sex with people once you have a romantic attraction to them. And that's great too. I want you to own that and not feeling shame for being like, oh, I don't have enough casual sex, or, oh, I don't want to have sex, or sex is not the glue that holds my relationship together.
Right.
Or if you're someone who's extremely kinky, like I give you the tools to try to find that. If you're someone who's monogamish, polyamorous, open, or super vanilla, it doesn't matter. I want you to own whatever your relationship is with sex, however that may look.
I could not agree with you more, and I think you just said that so well, and that's like my mission is like, can we just get rid of like the shame and the stigma? And I mean, like what I hear in your story is like, it's kind of like you were told that you're not you, or that your experiences are not real, and it's like fucked up.
It's like, a weird, and I know this word is overused, but it's like gaslighting my identity. It is like very bizarre. But just like, you are not this, and it's not like, like what?
Like, who are you to tell me who I am?
There's also such a weird, like perverse glee that monosexuals, like gay and straight people, like take in trying to prove that you, a proud bisexual person, are in fact not bi. It's almost like a game for sports, or like a devil's advocate thing where I'm like, what? Like, this isn't fun for me. Like I don't enjoy having to justify my sexuality, and I don't have to justify. And that's what I write in this book too, where it's like, I have a chapter where it's literally like probably 20 or different responses I've heard to people coming out as bi, or to me, people responding to me saying I'm bi, and how I have responded and how I wish I've responded. And one thing I kind of make clear in this, and it's a really divergent section from the rest of the book, which is, more memoir-y, where this one is more of the manifesto element, where it's me giving more advice, because I am a sex advice columnist, so I felt like I should throw that in there. One thing I try to make clear is like, A, you don't actually have to prove yourself to anyone, and you not engaging with them is actually more likely to change their beliefs. The moment you actually play their game and by their rules, and you're already on the defense and trying to justify yourself, they've already won. So when they're like, oh, I don't think you're bi because blah, 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 I go, okay. And then and literally they don't know what the fuck to say or do, because like they're ready for this argument, and it's like me showing that like I'm so secure in my sexuality and my identity, I don't need you, a random fucking stranger who I'm definitely not going to fuck anymore. Like telling like I don't need your validation, because who the fuck are you? I don't care. You're a random person. I'm so secure in myself. And I think I realized when I've done that, they actually are more likely to then believe bisexuality is real. Like than a well executed coherent argument like that actually is not going to sell them.
I like that. It's like, just be you. You don't have to convince anyone that you are you.
Yeah.
And, part of what my other agenda is that I like to promote sort of awakening and consciousness. And it's like the most enlightened thing is to like, don't resist. Like if someone's coming at you with something, it's like, okay, cool. That's their shit. You don't need to resist that. You're you.
Absolutely.
So maybe you're just like a boyslut Buddha.
A boyslut Buddha. Oh my God. I love that.
Feel free to steal it.
A boyslut Buddha. I don't think I've earned the title just yet. I still need to work on
your path. I can tell.
I'm on my path. I'm definitely on my path here.
But yeah, so that's super fun. The other thing you mentioned that you wanted to chat about that I'm curious about, I had to look up this word, phrasexual. Please enlighten us on that.
Sure. So this was something where I've almost grown a little bit since it being in the book. But so phrasexuality, I think, is often easier to explain in opposition to demisexuality, which people are more familiar with.
Okay.
So demisexuality means that you only have sexual attraction to people once you have a romantic or an emotional connection.
Right.
So you don't really see someone on the street and be like, oh, they're super hot, I want to jump their bones. It's only after you have a, heart to heart with them and you feel emotionally connected, do you want to jump their bones?
Yeah.
And then there's kind of phrasexuality, which is the opposite of that, where it's like actually once you have an emotional connection, you don't want to have sex with them anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's like these people prefer to have for these people, sex is usually about the novelty, the excitement. And so, they prefer having sex with strangers or casual sex or kinky sex, whatever it is. And sex is not really the glue that holds a relationship together. It's not how they express their intimacy. And the reason why I talk about this book was not to be like, oh, look at this new sexuality that well defines me.
Right.
It was more so to be like, hey, no matter what your relationship is with sex, you can find a partner that matches you. So you could be demisexual, phrasexual, whatever it is. But I've received a lot of flack for this. Because a lot of people are like, oh my God, it just seems like this person has emotional intimacy issues or avoidancy issues or sexual trauma. And I'm like, these people might. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, and it's kind of up to them as to whether or not they want to work on it. I also believe that this could probably be hardwired as well, right? So I think I think for some people it is just more hardwired, the relationship with sex. For other people, they have sexual intimacy issues, so they claim this identity label. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, so many of us have intimacy issues and avoidancy issues, to be like, and everyone's like, oh, well, this guy's just a fuckboy. I'm like, well, you don't have to date him. Wouldn't you much rather him voice that this is his relationship with sex before you have sex, as opposed to him having sex with you twice, him wanting to not have sex with you, but still wanting to date you and you being left super confused.
Right.
But it's a way where people get really they're like, oh, this is just fuckboy behavior. I'm like, yeah, it could be. But hey, they're being honest about it. They could be hardwired this way. And also I feel like often a lot of people like having sex with new people, and sex is about the novelty and the excitement, and it's
Novelty's
less so
huge, yeah.
And it's less so about this is how we show our love for each other. But people got really frustrated with this one in a way where I'm like, hold on. Also it's first of all, people with avoidancy issues and commitment issues are going to figure out a way to do that regardless of a label or not here. But I really just think what this was supposed to show was really you can have a different type of relationship with sex and still have a fulfilling relationship.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's fascinating to me as you explain these things too. It's people just keep rejecting things that they don't understand. And I think what I want people to understand is just because you have a certain experience doesn't mean everyone else needs to have the same experience. We are all beautifully different.
And I get it. You know what I mean? We are these people, I'm sure the people who have the most issue with this label are probably, women who have been fucked over by shitty dudes who lost interest in, and who were, I don't know, lied to them or were avoidant or whatever it was. So it's a lot of projecting is often, that's what I see when most people get really upset about something where I'm like, this has nothing to do with you. You know what I mean? When this has nothing to do with you and they get really, really upset by it, I'm like, okay, so who hurt you? What's going on here? How did this, because this has literally nothing to do with you right now, and you're getting really, really upset. So there's some projection going on. There's some denial going on. There's some hurt and pain going on. Because this thing, people got really upset about this. Oh, Zach clearly has emotional intimacy issues. I'm like, yeah, of course I do. So do we all. And I've also kind of grown where with my partner now, sex is one of the things that really holds us together in a way. Cool. And I love having sex with her, and it's awesome. And it's been, past that time period where usually by now I'm like, okay, really itching to move on, but it hasn't been. So, it's a fluid identity, just like anything else. That. But I think I've gotten some weird responses to it. I'm like, who, again, I just want to be who hurt you guys?
Well, right. I mean, I think that's kind of a real question because we all have been hurt,
Yeah.
And so I do think that, like, for everyone listening, like, that's our responsibility. So it's like whatever you're triggered by, that's a sign. Like, that's a sign that there is a wound there. And then, like, go find a coach or therapist and, like, do some healing work because you deserve to not be triggered by shit.
Yeah.
And, like, the more you are healing yourself, the more you're just going to be like, cool, I'm going to let other people be them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
it's really, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned in writing. I mean, I've been writing as a sex columnist for a long time. So, like, I've got this before, but now I'm getting it at such a larger scale and it's such a much more personal attack where I'm like, okay, like, wow, people really can't separate between, like, can't separate these things and really don't want to look inward and see what's going on with themselves.
I also think you're bringing up a good point that, like, maybe you've evolved, but also maybe your current relationship is just different.
Yeah.
I
think that's true. Like, it could be that this is your relationship with each person, for whatever the reason. Like, everything doesn't have to be so set in stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like for a while, especially the LGBTQ community really wanted to make things more set in stone because they felt like it justified our sexuality. So it's like the born this way idea that's like, oh, gay people are born this way, we cannot change, and it validates us, versus like the argument that it should have been is, what if we're like, what's wrong with being gay? Like even if we were not born this way,
There's
even
no
if I
need to defend it.
if I chose it, what's wrong with that?
Exactly.
So I feel like there's always somewhat of this fear of when we talk about fluid relationships or fluid identities that it can actually then be hurled against us. You know what I mean? Then they're like, conservatives or religious zealots are going to be like, well, it's fluid, so therefore you can be straight. It's like, well, no, that's not what we mean by fluid. Like that's not where we're going with this. But that's one thing. I always try to have that balance where it's like, yeah, things can be fluid and change. But again, that doesn't mean I can be straight tomorrow. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I'm going to be straight or cisgender tomorrow just because, or whatever. Or I mean, I'm cisgender, but you know what I mean? Someone who is trans or non-binary, like, they can very much use this fluidity against us. But I actually think when it's used correctly, it's a beautiful thing. It allows us to grow and change in the way that we see fit.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, my whole thing is sort of like sexuality as like a personal growth journey and just like an exploration journey. And, even with like the gender stuff that's been coming up, like all in like the legislation and all over social media, people will kind of say, well, some people detransition. It's like, sure, a smaller percentage will, but like, who cares? Like, that's for them to decide. I think it does go back to, we think we know what other people should do, or if we can point to like someone made a wrong decision, or this is like a failure, or see whatever. It's like, maybe someone got a boob job and then chose to get the implants removed. It's just like, I just kind of feel like it's none of my business.
Yeah, people really do love policing other people's bodies and what
I
they can do.
Like, right. Like, we all get to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
Unless you live in Florida like I do.
Yep. Then you get to do nothing. That's actually what it is.
Yeah. Or you could do stuff. It's just like harder and like more consequences.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm like in a little nice progressive enclave of Florida, but it's got its challenges. So anyways, back to you, Zach. I guess I'm curious, like, what have been some of the biggest things you've learned on your journey? Because like your journey, like you've gone like all in on this journey is like how I would put it.
I that's kind of my personality. I'm very much a balls to the walls personality. If I'm doing something, I'm fucking doing it. Wait. So I've already forgot what the question was. So what have I learned? Or what
have been some of like the biggest things you've learned on your journey? Because I just feel like, the average person maybe is not going to go as all in as you, but I don't know. What can they learn from your experience?
I think the larger takeaway, and if I already hit on this a little bit, sorry for being slightly redundant here, but I really think that you can own whatever your relationship with sex is. And I talk about this in the book where, like, I say learning that I'm not special was one of the best things about me. And when I say special, I just mean like actually not unique in my sexual orientation or not unique in my desires, that there were actually, even if, only 1% of the population has my kink, that's still 800,000 people. Did I do the math right? I think so. 800,000 people, if there are 8 billion of us, that like have that kink. And now you can connect with all of them on FetLife. You know what I mean? So like, realizing when I thought I was so alone and so different, that's when my mental health took a turn for the worst, right? When you feel so alone and isolated. I really think shame like thrives in isolation.
100%.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, it was terrible feeling so alone. And then when I was able to embrace these elements of myself and really start looking for my community, and it took me a while to find it. Now I'm part of this, bisexual, polyamorous, kinky community in New
Oh my
York.
gosh, that sounds amazing.
Which is truly amazing. And when I think about sometimes leaving New York because, there are rats the size of chihuahuas that brush up against my leg when I walk home from the subway, I'm like, I don't leave because of my friends, because of this community that I've cultivated, and it took a while to get here. And now I feel so supported and so loved and so seen. And so there's nothing like it. And so
did you create this community, or was this like a pre-existing thing that you kind of found?
Both. You know what I mean? I think I definitely helped to create it. I didn't go into a space, and together we kind of built it the way that we wanted it to be built. I have this group. It's called, we have our own Discord chat, of course, called Home. And it's like 40 of us. And it's this, it's very bisexual and polyamorous and supportive. And we have, various channels for just literally supporting each other, asking each other's questions, whatever it is. It really is great. And it's something that I really do believe anyone can find. It takes work. It takes effort to do so. It's putting yourself out there, going to, getting online, honestly, like it's much easier actually when it's like sex positivity stuff, because a lot of like bi spaces are really, there aren't that many bi spaces, but the ones that do exist are very sex focused. And I actually do feel bad for my friends who are like monogamous or more vanilla and don't want to go to a sex party, because that's how I actually end up meeting a lot of bi people, which is great for me, which is, I love that. But like, I wish there were some more bi spaces that didn't necessarily center around sex, which is what they tend to be at the moment.
As you're mentioning this, I'm thinking like, what resources would you recommend? Like if there's somebody listening who, is a guy who's maybe never come out, but like has some interest towards men, or thinks he might be bisexual, or hasn't told his wife yet, or, I'm just thinking of like some real scenarios and some imagined ones. Yeah.
Well, honestly, there's a great community online. Obviously, like Twitter, it can be a hellscape, and so can all of social media. When you get on by Twitter or by TikTok, or Reddit actually has some great bisexual support groups. Yeah. And you can actually just like first start by finding a digital community, because we're able to do that right now, to meet with other people. And then you'll learn that some people actually live in your area. And then all of a sudden you meet up with them. They have other friends in community. They introduce you. And before you know it, you have this huge friend group. And it honestly sometimes happens like a switch, where I have people being like, I haven't been able to make friends or find a bi community in so long. It's been 5 years. And then all of a sudden they meet this one person who then opens them up to this other scene. And it just like switches immediately. So like, don't necessarily give up hope there. But I think initially, like working with virtual spaces to do that. And then from that, trying to, find a community outside of those spaces and meeting up in real life. But, Googling bisexual meetups, groups near you, and seeing what's going on. And that's, the way to meet people.
And would you say specifically looking for bisexual ones, or not just like LGBTQ?
Depends what you want. You know what I mean? The people who go to, we all struggle with various different things. I like the bi ones more specifically, but sometimes LGBTQ. I don't actually, you might know this better, but I feel like, there's different like AA versus NA versus other things, because they know that there's a difference between like, alcoholics and drug addicts. Not that I'm comparing gays and bisexuals to alcoholics and drug addicts here.
Just groups.
But just being like, okay, it might actually be better to have a different group. Or if you don't have a bisexual specific meetup group, then of course go to a larger LGBTQ one.
Okay, cool. And so if someone's like, okay, cool, how do I find this on Twitter? Like, do they just look for hashtags?
Honestly, at this point, look for hashtags. I mean, Google's great. You know what I mean? Like bisexual accounts to follow on Twitter. Google that right now, and then you'll see the support. Like they'll link to various accounts. Bi activists you should be following online. It's like Google has made shit really easy. You know what I mean? Like
ChatGPT. ChatGPT is like my new buddy.
Well, I didn't even ask about this. Can you ask ChatGPT where are bisexual meetup groups?
Oh yeah. I probably could. I could probably
be like,
do it right now.
Like, or who are the biggest bisexual activists on Twitter or Instagram?
So the only limitation with ChatGPT is that the cutoff for information is September 2021. So if it's anything that's like super recent, it won't. But
interesting.
Let's ask it. Who are the best bisexual influencers to follow? I feel like it always like prefaces its answer too. It's like,
well, it's like, isn't the answer like, this could be extremely racist and we're sorry. What?
Okay, so it's starting to give me answers. So it's saying Bella Thorne, actress, model, singer who gained fame from her work with Disney Channel. noticing they were all assigned female at birth so far. Evan Rachel Wood, Janelle Monáe.
Okay, I mean,
here's a dude,
so these
Alan
are
Cumming.
Celebrities. Okay, so they're pulling from like, here are the 10
yeah.
bisexual celebrities that you should follow.
Shane Dawson, Jillian Michaels. Yeah. It failed us slightly, but it gave us some names.
Well, now we know which celebrities are bi here.
Yeah, that's true. You can find resources and community pretty easily if you try, but I do think you got to put some energy into it.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. I just want to say, like, it's worth it. You know, it's like you deserve, like Zach has experienced, like, find your community, you know, and to be fully accepted.
You know, almost think of it like dating, you know, when you're just like, oh, it's a pain in the ass, like texting these people and going on first dates, and a lot of them are duds. Like, that's what's going to happen. But if you want to find a romantic partner, you have to go on dates. So, like, that is the rule. So, like, yes, it's going to be slightly annoying at times. You're going to go to an event and 3 people will show up and you'll be a little discouraged.
Right.
And then you get back on the horse the next week, though. That's how it works.
Yeah. And I kind of want to say, so I just did an episode on Am I Queer? Are You Queer? And how everything is very fluid. And so while I'm not 100% straight, I am mostly straight. I would just like to say to other straight women out there that, like, male bisexuality is real. And, like, this doesn't mean that, you know, they're not into you. And I do think that we have to get over that. And I also think, you know, that it's important for dudes to, like, bring it up, you know, and but to feel safe. It's like, I feel like it's both, right? So you got to make people feel safe and hold the space. And then also you got to kind of be brave and, like, say things to the people exactly in your life. Yeah.
It's tough. Like, bisexual people are the least likely to come out to, like, their peers, their partners, their family. And then a large part of that is because there are so few bisexuals that come out. So, you know, it's almost this, you're going around in a circle here where it's like bi people don't come out because other bi people don't come out. So you don't come out. So other bi people don't come out. So we got to kind of break that cycle. And that's hopefully what I'm trying to do in the book, is just being, like, really starting to claim this label, be open about it, talking about it. Because it could, and I talk about this in the book too, where it's like, it's very difficult to be visibly bisexual. So bisexual visibility is tough because unless if you have, you know, a man on one arm, a woman on the other arm, and, like, a non-binary person on your third arm, like, and that sounds like
alternately making out with all of them.
Yeah, like, how else are you going to show this? So I coined the term in the book called bisexual audibility. And I'm like, what this means is, like, because we can't be visible the same way, we need to embrace the label, say the label, talk about being bisexual as much as possible, be as obnoxious about it as humanly possible. And I feel like many of us are great at that. So let's keep it up.
Good job, team. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm wondering if you could just tell people, like, where can they find you? Where can they find your book? Who is your book good for?
Good. Yes. So my book is good for everyone. You know what I mean? But I
bought one already. I'm going to be reading it this week.
It's like, you know, parts of it are very raunchy. It's very humorous. It's, you know, it's not for the faint of heart, I will say. And, you know, but it's particularly, while this book is for everyone, I really think if you are bi, queer, gay, kinky, polyamorous, this book is really, really for you as well. So the book is called Boyslut. It's a one word because if we did it as 2 words, it actually get, like, dinged on Amazon. Like, they wouldn't, because slut would be registered. You know what I mean? So that's why it's one word. So you got to Google it as one word on Amazon.
Okay.
Boyslut, sold anywhere books are sold. And you can follow me at zacharyzane.com is my website. I'm officially off Twitter now. I'm very proud of myself. I just have it there. Zach. It's not great for my mental health, and I'm not seeing any traffic from it, so it's just really there. I don't use it, but I use Instagram all the time. That's where I'm my most fun.
Yeah, and that's how I found you. And, you know, again, he's not boring, guys, so follow him.
And that's Zachary Zane _. The underscore's at the end of it.
Yeah, and we'll link to all of it on the show notes, and then my website will also have a page for the episode with all the links as well. So
fabulous.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on.